Hey, what's happening people? Woodsy Workout here. Today I wanted to go over some frequently asked questions for Hyrox, and I actually had the pleasure of having a little Q&A myself with some of the Elite Hyrox Athletes that provided me with some great insight that I wanted to share with you guys. We spoke to Viola, Lucas and Karina, who between them have so much experience, championships, a bunch of podiums, and Lucas has even got the world records for the mixed doubles. So for those who are interested, I will put the link to that conversation that we had. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of summarize it and give some of my advice, as well as answer some of the questions that I get asked a lot. So one of the things that we covered, and something a lot of people ask, is nutrition. Before and during the race, what should they eat? Should they take gels? Yeah. So I think the reason a lot of people ask this is because there's some conflicting views. And I think the reason there's conflicting views is because there's no real concrete answer. It depends on the person. And you can actually dig into the science to kind of prove this. When you're working at a high intensity, your body will use carbohydrates as fuel for your activity. And depending on how hard you're working and how big you are and how efficient you are, you will use glucose at different rates. So you can actually test for this via a VO2 max and a resting metabolic test to see at what heart rate you burn glycogen, fat, and how many calories that is. So now your bodies and your muscles have their own glucose stores, and then when that gets used up or gets close to being used up, your body will reduce the output that you're capable of, i.e. you'll start to crash. So until you refuel. And then here's an example of where we're all different. So like Hunter McIntyre, he's done metabolic testing and found that at the rate which he burns carbohydrates is such that if his carb stores are topped up enough before racing, he won't need to refuel well beyond 60 minutes. And he also knows pretty confidently that he's going to race under the hour. So he doesn't need to refuel within his race. He just needs to make sure that his carbohydrate stores are topped up before racing. And then this is where you can't always follow the elites, because the longer the race is for you, the more likely you're going to need to refuel before the finish. And you may use carbohydrates at different rates. Lucas, who we spoke to, currently holds the world record for the mixed doubles. He ran his first race with no fuel, or actually he might have said he had one gel, but when he races now, he takes 4 gels, one 30 minutes prior, one 5 minutes prior, then 2 during, after the burpees, and 1 after the lunges. Now I don't know whether he's had his metabolism tested, but if this method is working for him where it wasn't before, it's likely that he's burning more carbohydrates than Hunter during his race. So I would definitely encourage going to get a resting metabolic test or a VO2 max test, and hopefully in the near future I will be able to provide that service. But if you don't, one thing I would say is definitely test how you respond to taking gels, because it's not just getting the glucose and the calories in, it's can you metabolize it during a race. So yeah, before you go out and double down on the gels, test it within your workouts. This is something the elite athletes really encourage. They do test run simulations with different gels at different times, and see whether they can stomach it, because the last thing I want. I don't want to have to run around you whilst you're, chundering, and you don't want that. It's a mess. Test it first. So the next question is, how does training change in the lead up to competition? And I've covered this in a previous video, so I won't spend too long on it, but this, I just kind of wanted to share the Elite experience, which I kind of agree with, and the general consensus is you don't train Hyrox specific all year round. Your off season, which if you're sort of 4 to 6 months out of a race, is your chance to work on your weaknesses, and through traditional strength training or like steady state cardio. For example, Lucas will do long cycles, swims and runs 6 months out, and then he'll start to incorporate heavy strength training, and then he'll do a combination of the two, and then more Hyrox specific about 12 weeks out. And that's quite similar with Viola and Karina. So just that they prioritize what they need more of. So moving on, one thing I find people don't actually talk about, but maybe they should, is how to reduce the time spent in the rock zone. So this is the area between stations. Immediately after you finish your exercise, you'll be in the rock zone until you get to the running track around the edge. And it's very easy to clock up unnecessary time here. But the key thing is keep moving. So you don't have to straight away hit your full speed, but stopping or walking, it makes it very hard to get going again. So I know it's easier said than done when you come off the sleds or the lunges and your legs are heavy, your heart's pounding, but if you can just keep a cadence and hold it through the rock zone, maybe onto the first lap, you'll find that your heart rate and the lactic acid in your blood and your legs start to shift, and you can get back to a pace. And I'd argue that's one of the hardest points, that moment you come off of a station straight into the run. After about a lap or so, you can get back into your rhythm, and you start to feel like it's achievable again. So yeah, and then one thing that Karina brought up that I think was really useful is she actually uses an alarm in her training. So it gives her like 10 seconds to finish an exercise and get and move on to the next one. So it's definitely something to think about and incorporate. And the other thing is, if you are like running a simulation, then or even if you're doing like the race in parts, you have to account for the rock zone. So it actually adds like 0.7 kilometers to your total running. So you'll actually run 8.7 kilometers on race day. So the final thing that I wanted to cover, and something that I've been kind of playing with for a while, is this concept of fresh or fatigued. So especially when it comes to the wall balls and to some degree the lunges, in training it's almost impossible to stimulate that feeling of doing those reps at the end of your race. However, there is a principle of training that whatever you want to prioritize, you do first. So your body is most primed to adapt to that given stimulus. So do you work on your weakness at the beginning of the session when you're fresh, or fatigued at the end of the session to simulate race? And the reality is you should be doing both. So things like max unbroken reps of like a heavy thruster or wall balls at the beginning of your workout will add strength, and it kind of gives you like a standalone benchmark. If you watch the Hyrox documentary, you may have heard Hunter say that you could do 200 unbroken, but then obviously he's not doing that. He's breaking up his wall balls within the race. So yeah, and then a good strategy that Lucas brought up was just tacking on to the end of your workouts wall balls. So and even building beyond the 100 wall balls to represent that feeling that's a lot closer to sort of the race experience. And then finally, I'd recommend closer to when you've got your race, formulate a plan as to how you want to break up the wall balls. And full sending that first set is not a good idea. It will spike your heart rate beyond recovery, and you only want to do that for the last set. So your first set will be a big chunk, but I like to go sort of 5 to 10 below my max, and then a few smaller sets with small breaks, and then leave a large set to finish on, because you know if you put that ball, you're not going to put that ball down with like 2 or 3 reps to go. You're just going to really full send it all the way to the finish. So that was some of the biggest takeaways I got from talking to the elite athletes and my experience with training. If you have any more questions or follow-ups, leave a comment. And if you are interested in getting professional coaching on Hyrox or another event, I do personal, group and remote coaching. Just send me a message on Instagram @WoodseyWorkout, where you can find plenty more advice and tips on all things health and fitness. Until next time, see ya.